I'm Peter O'Brien. I'm representing Bristol Community College, Student Veterans of America. I'm interviewing Dan LeBlanc on Friday, September 15th, 2023 at the Fall River Community Media Studio at Bristol Community College in Fall River, Massachusetts. Also present with us is Austin Scott, who is operating the cameras, and Denny Cosmo of the Joseph A. Marshall Veterans Center. This interview is being conducted for the Veterans History Project at the Library of Congress. All right, sir, could you please go ahead and tell me your full name, your date of birth, your years of service, and the conflict of which you were involved in and what branch?
My full name is Dona Jean LeBlanc. I go by Dan. My date of birth is April 10th, 1946. I served in the United States Marine Corps from 1965 until 1967.
Okay, and
I served in Vietnam.
Excellent. So can you tell me about your early days in service, or what led up to you wanting to join the service?
I always wanted to be a Marine. I always wanted to be in the Marine Corps, even from my junior high school days. Right. When I graduated from high school, it was 1964, and we had the draft, and my number came up, and I had to go to Boston to AFES for my draft physical. And on the bus ride back, I made the decision I wasn't going to let the government tell me where to go.
That's right.
Went down to the recruiter's office, saw Gunny Cooper and Gunny Robinson, Sergeant Robinson and Gunny Cooper, and enlisted in the Marine Corps in late 64. Delayed entry program. I got in 65. Robinson, God bless his soul, said, "Don't volunteer for nothing." So the first thing I did was to Boston was they asked for guys with 4-year enlistments who had high school degrees to volunteer for aviation. So I raised my hand. First time there, volunteered. First day, wasn't even sworn in yet. So myself and 9 other guys were sent to aviation. When I went to school after Paris Island, infantry training, ITR. After that, my first duty station was Millington, Tennessee. Naval Air Technical Training Center. My choice was clerical because I didn't want to fly. Right. I didn't think that was the good thing to do in Vietnam, even though Vietnam was still the Indochina War. It wasn't Vietnam yet.
Right.
I got my third choice. They made a mechanic out of me. I said, I don't know which end of the screwdriver to hold, and I'm going to be a mechanic on a helicopter. I loved it. I graduated from helicopter school, myself and 9 other guys. I was a class leader because I was the only PFC in the class.
Okay.
Half the class went to Quantico, and the other half got FMF Pacific orders. I ended up, first stop was California in Dago to escape and evasion. They had us go through escape and evasion,
Right, sure.
pre-Vietnam stuff.
What Sears School is today.
Yes. That's in my book. I have pictures of the newspaper articles that were published the day I graduated from escape and evasion. It was tough nuts. It wasn't easy.
I bet.
Some of the things that we don't let our country do to our enemy today, we were doing to our Marines back in the 60s.
That's right.
It just wasn't right. Anyway, one of our 9 guys didn't make it through the class. He got washed out because of that. But the rest of us, 3 or 4 of us, got assigned to the same squadron in Vietnam. 3 guys, of which I'm still in contact with today.
That's awesome. That's excellent.
It's really cool. I mentioned their names in my book by first name and last name initial. They all got a copy of the book. They all knew about the book.
Right.
They all loved the book. Not had any negative responses because of that. But I mentioned them because of the things that we went through, not through Millington so much as when we got to Vietnam and being crewmen and crew chiefs. I had passed the crew chief exam, but I didn't want to be a crew chief. I flew first mech for the whole time I was there. I flew the window. I always had a thought that flying in the door was the bigger target flying in the door.
I would think so, right? Yeah.
It was a mistake. I got hit in the window, took 2 rounds in the chest, doing a medevac. The irony of the medevac is one of the guys, we got called on a secondary mission that day, and it was, we did a troop insertion first, supposed to be a hot zone, nothing. We left the zone. I was the lead plane that day. There was 4 of us. We got a secondary call for they needed a medevac. They had 13 recons walked into an ambush.
Right.
2 guys KIA, 2 WIA, and the other 9 guys were running out of ammo. So they wanted to be medevaced right away. So we flew to the coordinates. Unfortunately, when we flew in the coordinates, we had a brand new left seat co-pilot.
Okay. That's baptism by fire, literally, right?
Exactly. And those guys are former jet jockeys that didn't like flying high and fast. They wanted to fly low and slow.
Sure.
Well, we never did a medevac that way. And I can remember to this day flying in treetop. They heard us coming.
Right.
They heard us coming. I mean, the whop, whop, whop was so distinctive. We used to do auto rotations, come in at altitude and drop in, do an auto rotation, drop, re-engage the motor, and come right in on them. Not this day. Well, as we're coming in, I'm on my gun, I'm looking, we had M60s. I pans left to right because the tire was on the right side of me, so I never wanted to start with the tire.
Yeah.
So I pan left to right. As I'm getting to the right, I saw the dirt kick up from the ground.
You know what that was?
The rounds came right up, tracer rounds, came right up the barrel, hit me in the chest. I took a round in the chin and the neck, and then one went through me in the chest. I went down. I got unplugged. Crew chief told me 2 or 3 days later when he come visit me in sick bay that he's the one guy I haven't been able to reach out to. I know he survived Vietnam. I know he's home, but all the reunions I've been to, I can't get a hold of him. Right. Guys have flew with him, but don't remember where he lived, and I've tried every way possible to locate him. Anyway, he told me that he heard me firing on my side of the plane. I said, man, what he saw was my hand in the trigger housing getting hit and then pulling back on the trigger and firing.
To getting hit.
Yeah, exactly. And it was like quick. He looked back and he started getting fire on his side. So when I went down, I'm looking at him and he was going nuts at the gun. He was firing like crazy. Next thing I know, he looks over at me and he doesn't see me because there's nobody at the window and my gun's hanging out the window.
Right.
So he looks down on the deck and he sees me on the deck. I was bleeding out. I saw him go to his mouth, the mouthpiece, and he was radioing, don't land, mech's hit. So I felt the plane lift up. When the plane lifted up, I said, I'm going home.
Right.
That was my thought. I'm going to live, I'm going home. I'm not going to freaking die here. They got me back to we were flying off the LPH-2, the Iwo Jima. They got me back to the Iwo. He bandaged me up, but he didn't know where the wounds were because I got hit 3 different places.
And you're probably wearing a lot of stuff.
Well, actually not. That morning, because my plane was on the flight deck, we had a monsoon the night before.
Okay.
And the plane leaked like a sieve. And I had the flak jackets on the deck of the aircraft. So I took them out and put them on the deck of the aircraft carrier to dry out, because it's like an asphalt deck.
Sure.
And the heat would dry it out. Well, I did the circle check with the co-pilot and the pilot, and the co-pilot that day was a rookie. Comes up on deck with an international orange flight suit on. Like, oh man, am I in trouble?
Yeah, I don't know if that's going to blend in with the
oh my God,
the canopy of the jungle, right?
But the pilot that day happened to be the XO of the squadron, who wasn't supposed to be flying because he got his full bird, and he wanted one more mission for his air medal. Well, we were all pretty close, the crew and the pilots. We were all pretty close as far as it was never Colonel this or Lieutenant that. It was always Joe, Dan.
You guys
Bill.
had to be tight. You had to have that
it was a close
camaraderie.
Because not like in the movies, we got assigned to a plane. That was my plane.
Right.
I flew that plane from May until I got hit in September. That was my plane. Pilots rotated. whatever plane was the first to fly, or the first 2 guys on deck got the plane. Well, that day, it was me. The lieutenant's chewing my butt because in my helicopter, I had scotch taped penthouse Playboy pictures in the ceiling of the aircraft.
Okay.
Because when we brought wounded aboard and they looked up, that's what they saw. You always had a smile, and if I looked down, and they'd be smiling.
Right.
I also had my M60 rounds hanging over the ICS cables leading back to the radio compartment in the tail of the aircraft. That's against flight regulations. But it was easier for me to grab a bandolier and stuff it in the gun than to go to my ammo can and open the ammo can while I'm receiving fire.
That's right.
It didn't make any sense. Well, I got chewed out for that. When the pilot come up on deck and heard him chewing me out, he said, "Morning, Dan. Plane ready to go?" I said, "Yes, sir, ready to go." He said, "Okay." He says, take a walk. Well, the lieutenant's all pissed off because I didn't salute the colonel when he come up on deck. None of us wore covers. In air wing, you don't wear a cover.
That's right.
So he said, "Take a walk." So I walked around the plane, and I got over to my side, the window side, and he's blasting this guy. I mean, he is chewing his ass out, up one side and down the other. Now you go back down below deck and you get that suit off and get put on a green suit. We didn't have camo back then. It was just green suit. So the lieutenant's all pissed off. He left. The colonel comes around to me and he says, "We're at the clamshell now." And I got the clamshell doors open. Oh, that's what the lieutenant was chewing me out for. My safety wire wasn't right. So I'm talking about safety wire's right. So he says, all he said to me is, "We're ready to go?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Well, lock it up. Let's go." So he closed the clamshell, locked it up, jumped in the plane, and left without my flak jacket. The flak jackets were on the flight deck. We rolled up forward, picked up the 3rd Battalion, 26th Marines. That's who we supported. They jumped on the plane, and we took off for the mission. As we were circling around, I notices. I
You're looking down at the boat?
This is my flak jackets on the flight deck. So I didn't have a flak jacket on when I got hit.
Okay.
It turned out to be a blessing because days later, when they took me from the EWO, they took me over to the repos. And one of my buddies, one of my former crew chiefs, flew over to bring blood from the EWO over to the repos. And he landed on the repos and he come down below deck looking for me. Well, I was, they had pulled the chest tube out of me, so I was able to walk around with a sling on my right arm.
Right.
And he come down and I said, "Bob," I said, "let me try the flak jacket on." So we maneuvered the flak jacket over my arm because I had a flail arm. So we put the flak jacket on, and the flak jacket had a ring around the collar. It was a ring of that crap that they put in the vests. Kevlar.
Right.
And the doc came out. He said, "What are you guys doing?" I said, "I'm just looking at where, how the flak jacket would have made a difference had I got hit. The rounds came from the ground up. My scar is right on my clavicle." The doc said, "If you had that thing on, you'd be a dead man. The round would have hit the flak jacket and deflected up. Instead of going through you, it would have gone through your head. It would have killed you." So it was a blessing that I didn't have the flak jacket on.
It didn't happen by mistake that you left it out there, huh?
Yep.
That's great. It's interesting that you, by chance, put your gear out to dry, but in the long run, it ended up saving your life.
There's so much irony in what happens in life. One of the guys I pulled out that day, one of the medevacs, is a close friend of mine to this day. I helped him get his comp. He lives in Mattapoisett. Before pandemic, we used to see each other at least once every couple of months for breakfast.
Right.
Nice guy. He got loss of use of one of his arms because he got gunned down. But I knew about what hit me because those guys, the grunts, when they ran out of ammo, it was hand-to-hand combat. And they recaptured the .30 caliber machine gun that hit me, that was one of ours, that they had captured from us.
Right.
We got it back. And that's the story I got from the crew chief. They got the .30 caliber that hit you was one of ours. I didn't know that till he told me.
Well, it's definitely pretty cool that they got it back.
Yeah. And there was another guy. Now, he was a recon. There's another guy that I met at a coffee shop years ago. He's at my house today visiting me. He was a mortarman with 3rd Battalion, 26 Marines. We met at a coffee shop. Marines, how you doing, Semper Fi, who'd you serve with, who you deployed, blah,
Right,
blah, blah.
yeah.
3rd Battalion, 26 Marines on the EWO in 1966. Are you kidding me? He was a mortarman, but they didn't know each other.
Right.
But he was a mortarman with a 326 the same time I was on the EMO.
It's absolutely a small world.
It is. It's incredible.
It is. And I think it's great as Marines, right? I'm being a Marine myself, that it doesn't
Yes.
matter. The span of time in between, there's always that type of,
No.
that brotherhood that will automatically reconnect you as soon as you see somebody.
It is funny you say that because that's what I say. It's a brotherhood. People
Absolutely.
don't understand when you say Semper Fi to me. Usually my response is, we were in the Corps.
Right.
And if you say yes, then I'll Semper Fi.
That's right.
Because some people will say Semper Fi thinking it's just a greeting. It's more than that.
Mm-hmm.
It's more than that. When it comes to somebody who's not in the Corps, it doesn't deserve a response. Sorry. And
Hey, that's great. Yeah.
I just come back before I had my surgery. My wife and I took a cruise to Alaska. I met 2 or 3 Marines, and that was the first question when they'd say, because I always wore my cover.
Mm-hmm.
I feel naked without my cover on.
Right.
I'd hear Semper Fi, and I'd ask, "You in the Corps?"
Mm-hmm.
"Oh yeah, yep, I served." And then we'd talk. But I've had 2 or 3 guys who would say Semper Fi to me, and I'd ask the question. They say, "Oh no, I was in the Navy." And one guy, he was with his wife, and I said, "Well, you have my sympathies." She caught it, she laughed, but he didn't
Right.
catch it right away. So he was a little bit upset because they didn't say Semper Fi back to him.
Right. Well, we got to keep ourselves thinking we're a little bit better
Yeah,
than the rest.
I said, "Thank you for your service." So I was, kind enough to thank him for his service, because I would always ask, "Were you deployed?" "Oh no, I spent my time in wherever, someplace in California or something." One Marine, on one of the bus tours, I said, "Were you deployed?" He said, "Well, if you consider Hawaii deployment, and I was deployed." I said, "No,
It's outside the continental
I
United
don't
States.
consider
but
that deployment."
That's
So
right.
he laughed. It is a brotherhood, and it is it's difficult. I've lost a lot of friends in the last 2 years. I was up to like 19, and one of them was my first sergeant in Vietnam.
That's probably a tough one.
He was a master gun, like you,
Mm-hmm.
and the sweetest guy. He was a Baptist. When I got the phone call, Veterans Day, my phone has his name on it. I heard his name. My wife answered the phone. I'm putting the dog out. I said, "Well, tell Carl I said happy birthday and happy Veterans Day," because it was the 11th. I heard her say, "Oh, hi, Linda." It's his wife. Oh, man. I sat down right away. I knew, because he had been fighting cancer
Right.
for years, for years. Well, he died. She said he passed away. I looked at my wife and I said, "We got to go." He was from Illinois. I'm sorry, Missouri, St. Louis, Missouri. I said, "We got to go." So she made the arrangements, flight, rental car, hotel, the whole 9 yards. And I belong to Marine Corps League, locally, New Bedford Detachment.
Mm-hmm.
And I have my blues, Marine Corps League blues,
Right.
not our real Marine blues. But they're sharp. I said, I got to wear my blues to the funeral. I got it for him. Sorry. He was such a nice guy. I'm in line, waiting to visit him at the casket. And this old guy comes up to me. He said, "You Dan LeBlanc?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "I read what you said." I put a note at the funeral home that made a sympathy thing about how much I'm going to miss him and not going to be the same. He said, "I read what you said." He said, "I'm Carl's brother. There was 7 of us. They grew up on a farm in Indiana. He saved my life twice on the farm. I said, that's Carl. And you'd never know. He was such a sweet guy.
Right.
In civilian life, he was big in the church. When they had the Mass at the church, the minister was up telling us all about how Carl told him all about the Marine Corps. He taught him about why there's a red stripe on our uniform.
That's right.
He always carried the Marine Corps flag when they had a veteran ceremony in the church. He was the security guy at the church. He was just a top shelf guy. And the cancer just finally got to him. It was very sad and very nice at the same time, because his children, his son invited us, my wife and I, back to their house. I said, you don't have family coming? No, we want you to come. All the grandchildren will be there and the kids will be there, but we want you to come. I said, you sure? You don't have to. No, we want you there. So they sat me in the living room in the middle of all these kids sitting all over the floor, and they came in, and I don't know if it's the Baptist thing or what it is, but he was in his blues, and he looked sharp in the casket. I mean, if there's a way to look sharp, Carl was, he went away. I wish I could do the same thing. But they brought in his white cover with all of his medals and ribbons in the cover back to the house. I know he had a shadow box with all of his stuff in it, because when you walked in, they could see it.
Right.
So I was curious why they did that. So they sat down and they pulled out his combat air crewman wings, which is something that I'm very proud of. It's something that most of us that flew as combat air wing guys are proud of, to wear our combat air crewman wings.
As you should be.
You don't see them much anymore.
That's right.
First question was, what are these?
I knew it. You had to explain what these things
Because
were.
he
to them,
never
right?
told them what that was. I said, you don't get your wings unless you fly, back in the day, 3 combat missions, because that's what the 3 Bronze Stars represent, your first 3 combat missions. I said, they're very meaningful to Marines. It's not anything that you can earn outside of combat.
Right.
You can get your non-combat gold wings for air crew. You get your gold air crew wings, but the silver naval Marine Corps air crew wings are something special. And he thought very highly of them because he wore them all the time. And it's sad that we lost him. And we've been losing so many guys, and it's difficult.
I'm sure, right? Especially with the bond you build with them. I mean, you build a bond with any service member you serve with, but especially the guys you serve in combat with.
Yeah,
the bond's a little bit different, a little thicker.
It is. It is different, and some people find it hard to believe. Well, you're all Marines, yeah, but if you serve in combat with somebody, the reality of it is your life depends on the guy next to you.
That's right.
It's not like it is in civilian life, you know, and it's a bond that's death ends it.
That's right. That's right. That's pretty much the only thing that can take it away.
Yeah.
Right. We had talked earlier about how you'd gotten wounded, and we mentioned when you first sat down that was today. That was today.
57 years ago at noontime today. I got hit. I say noontime because the Navy came out and they had brought us a box lunch, a crappy apple.
So nothing much has changed with that,
a
right?
dry sandwich and a can of apple juice, and I hate apple juice. So I ate the sandwich, chewed on the apple, threw that out of the plane, and I knew I got hit right after lunch because it all came up.
Have you had apple juice since then?
No.
I didn't think so. So in your book that you wrote, and I don't know if I'm getting ahead of it, but was that the time that you considered it your rebirth?
No. No, actually it's been since that day. I always consider it my rebirth day. But the book actually, the book started when I was going to SMU.
Okay.
I was taking a class back in '72. It was a course on death and dying. Ebla Kubler-Ross wrote the book on death and dying. And, the professor's name escapes me. But he had us write a paper on something that occurred in our life that was traumatic, a funeral that you attended for a family member or something that happened to you that was reminded you of death. So I went home and wrote a paper on my Vietnam experience. It's probably the best grade I got was that, I think an A- he gave me. And I always had that paper and put it aside. After I left school and concentrated on my work with the VA, I worked for the VA for 32 years. My focus was my family, being productive in society, giving my family a good life. So I worked. 3 years in the post office sorting mail with one arm and a prosthesis. They never had that before. I delivered mail in California for a year. They didn't want to hire me. They finally did because I raised holy hell with them back in '68. They did hire me as a special delivery messenger. Can you drive a car? I drove here from Massachusetts. Yeah, I can drive a car. So they made me a speedy driver. Delivered mail. When they found out I put in for a transfer back to Massachusetts, they wanted to keep me. So I don't want to stay. I want to go back home.
Right.
So they asked me when I submitted my papers from Massachusetts, can you sort mail? Sure, I could sort mail. I had no clue. No clue what I was going to do. I got back here. I modified my artificial limb so I could sort mail, and I sorted mail for the next 2 years.
How do you modify an artificial limb to sort mail?
Well, you make I wore a what they call a manual prosthesis. My artificial limb had a chest strap.
Okay.
And by expanding and by breathing, you open and close the hook because it pulls on a cable that's wrapped around from the hook all around your body to the chest.
Got it.
I put like eyelets on the chest strap, and I said to the prosthetist, I want you to make it so it's so tight that every time I breathe, the hook opens. So every time I take a breath, the hook would open. So in the post office, everything is set up for right-handed people, and all the stamps are sorted a certain way, blah, blah, blah. Well, I sorted mail for 2 years, and I was able to hold the mail in the hook, and I was able to learn a technique where I could look at the mail, flip it, sort it, flip it, sort it, flip it, sort it. I never had a problem. Applied for the job in the VA, and I became management. I went from a clerk to manager.
That's great.
And I loved it. I ended up retiring here in Massachusetts as the prosthetic network manager for New England. I was responsible for all of the prosthetic services in New England, from Togus, Maine to West Haven, Connecticut. And it was a great job. I loved it. From that, I flipped into being a vets agent. I was a veterans agent in New Bedford after I retired from the VA. I did that for 8 years and helped a lot of people. I enjoyed what I did. I'm still helping people do benefits.
That's great.
And it's just in me. Unfortunately, what's happened to me is the PTSD has caught up to me. I'm been rated recently 100% for PTSD in addition to everything else,
Right.
which doesn't mean anything financially. It's just, for me, it was, when I first got out, they gave me 10% for PTSD, and it always kind of stuck in my craw, that 10%. You know what I went through?
Right.
You know, and then all the bodies and the crap that we deal with in combat, and 10%. So it was just recently, around the end of last year, I reopened a claim just for shits and giggles, and I got 100%.
Now, did you reopen the claim because, like you said, it just bothered you that they were kind of ignorant to what you went through then, or did things keep coming back and visiting you at night that made you think maybe I should?
Both.
Right.
Both. It was like, if I'm still having problems with, I don't sleep good at night, and I toss and I turn, I toss and turn, and it's just things. When a veteran's treated badly, I go nuts. I mean, I go ballistic. I don't like when the VA system does something that I think is wrong.
Right.
I go off on it. I've become a letter writer, And unfortunately, one of the jobs I had in the VA was I worked in central office for almost 3 years. And the bulk of what I did was writing congressional inquiries, answering congressional inquiries. I spent most of the time writing letters. And I hated it. I hated guys that would write letters because they shouldn't have to, because some of the stuff they were writing about should have been resolved locally. But now I got to write a letter through the congressman's office to answer why this guy didn't get treated correctly. So today I've become that person. I'm the guy that's writing letters. And it's happened a few times where I've had to write about certain things in my program that I don't like. And some things changed. I got an answer. I got phone calls. I got letters of apology. And it's not me. It's the system. And I think, unfortunately, I'm an advocate of the VA. I don't misunderstand. I'm an advocate of the VA, but the VA is changing. It's not my VA anymore. Things are changing. This customer service is to me, is a bunch of crap. Treating the veteran first is a bunch of crap. They are now sending us out to the private sector. I just had my shoulder replaced on the 5th of this month, and I demanded that I go to an outside hospital that I've been to on 2 other occasions that I paid through private insurance. I wanted the VA to pay this time because I have loss of use on my left arm. They rated me loss of use, 8 years ago. So I've got loss of use of both my arms. Because of the multiple surgeries on my left arm, I've had 3 rotator cuff operations, a bicep tendon reattachment, carpal tunnel syndrome. I've had a bone in my thumb taken out because of osteoarthritis. It's a mess. Well, they finally rated me with loss of use. Great. But this time I said, I want the VA to pay. I'm not going to use my private insurance. I want you to pay for everything. And I'm going to go to the best guy in the country who does reverse shoulder replacements. Because the guy that I contacted, who was my shoulder guy, said he does ligaments and tendons, he doesn't do bone stuff, but my colleague does. So when he referred me to this surgeon, I looked him up, I did my homework, I watched his video, I watched how the surgery is done and how all this works. I looked up his bio, I looked him up. The guy does 300 shoulder replacements a year. He's got a 1% infection rate. 1% is like nothing.
Right.
So when I went to the VA to get the okay for them to approve it, I saw the orthopedic resident. He said, yeah, you should have your shoulder replaced. What do you want me to do? I said, I want you to recommend I go outside. He said, well, they're not going to listen when I say. I don't care. If you recommend it, I'll fight. I need you to say I should go outside. So when I went a few weeks later to pick up the results of that meeting, the chief of orthopedics concurred with his recommendation that I go outside. So the VA, through community care, approved the surgery at the outside hospital. I visited with the surgeon. What a great guy. Paul, this guy, now I had my surgery the Tuesday after Labor Day. My cell phone's plugged in downstairs so it doesn't wake me up. I go downstairs, I had to be at the hospital at 5 o'clock in the morning on Tuesday after Labor Day. So I'm up at 3:30 in the morning, I'm downstairs, unplugs my phone. There's a message on my phone. This surgeon called me at 8:30 Monday night just to say, hope everything's okay, I'll be seeing you tomorrow in the morning, blah, 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 blah. I've had more surgeries than you can count. I never had a surgeon call me.
Reach out to you.
Never.
Before.
I saw him in the hospital, super guy. I mean, the nurses just bent over backwards at this hospital. They treated me like I was a god. He saw me a couple of times. The last time I saw him was on Tuesday after the surgery, and he said, Dan, I'm going to call you tomorrow. He said, I can't be here, so I'll call you. I said, why are you going to call me? He said, well, I'm going to be in Italy. I said, what? He said, I'm teaching a class on reverse shoulder replacements in Italy to surgeons in Italy, so I'll call you from there. Yeah, right. This guy's going to call me.
Right.
He called me. My cell phone rang. I'm laying in bed. The cell phone rings. My wife hands it to me. She says, Dan, this is Andy. I said, who the hell's Andy? He says, Dr. Jawa. I said, oh, hi, Dr. Jawa. What's going on? He says, I just want to make sure you're okay. What's your pain level? You know, how you doing? I said, Doc, I feel great. There's no pain. I've been struggling with pain been on narcotics for years. That's one of our goals. He and I had set goals. He had asked me, what's your goal? My first goal is to get off the Percocet that I'm on. I've been on Percocets, oxycodones, for a dozen years. Every night. I can't sleep. It's the pain mostly. So he says, okay. He says, what else? I said, just give me range of motion without pain. He said, okay. So he said, that's our goal. So when he called me that Wednesday morning, I said, Doc, I feel great. My pain level's 2. I've been an 8 and a 9 for years.
As long as you can remember, right?
Oh, so far back I can't remember, between the drugs and all that, but now I'm a 2 and I've got good range of motion. He doesn't recommend physical therapy. He tells me what to do at home, do the flexing, and he said, that's all you need to do, and I'll see you in 2 weeks, and we'll set up another regime for therapy at home. I said, great. So yeah, that part of it was very good. But going to the hospital is, I just found out yesterday that my primary care provider retired last Friday. I've had her for a dozen years.
Just found out?
Yeah. I called, the service center told me. Oh, wait, let me look. Oh, geez, you know this Dr. So-and-so? I said, no, never heard of him. So, well, that's your primary care provider. I said, never heard of the person. I said, what happened to my primary care provider? I said, you know, Dr. So-and-so. Oh, she retired last Friday. It was her last day. Disappointed because I loved her. She was super to me. And I'm glad she retired. But I'm angry at the VA for not calling. Yesterday afternoon in the mail, I get a letter from the VA saying my April appointment with my primary care physician was canceled. Okay. Did you reschedule it with the new person? Mm-hmm. I don't know. You know, I'll just be in this empty void until I call, get all pissed off, and talk to the service center, because you can't talk to anybody anymore. Right. You know, it's no, this open door policy service is not, customer service I think is a nice term that they like to use. Right. I'd love to spend an hour with the director of the hospital.
Always. Maybe if you keep pushing, you'll get it. You seem like the type of guy that can get what he wants.
Oh, and I tell people, especially at the VA, is look, I'm a retiree. I've spent 32 years working in this joint. I know how things work, and I'm angry at what's going on. I'm completely angry that the VA clinic doesn't see walk-ins. Right. They want to send me to Hyannis. Are you kidding me? I'm sorry. I digress.
No, that's fine. That's
my book was a catharsis for me. It started with that class at UMass.
The paper. And
at SMU. And it ended up, when the computers came out, I put it in the computer, then I started adding to it. And I figured, well, geez, I read about my life. And I'll start with my father. Because like you say, I told you, right. He was a POW in World War II. He was a tough nut.
I read that he was a disciplinarian.
He was tough on me. He was tough. The firstborn son, and I took a lot of heat.
But you also say in the book that kind of led you towards the military a little bit?
Yeah. I idolized my father. The fact that he was in the military.
Sure. And
that he survived the prison camp and came home and got married, and we moved to California and all this stuff. But I always idolized my father, even though he wasn't my kind of guy. My father wasn't a jock. I was a jock. He never saw my father never saw me play ball until I was probably 40 years old playing softball in New Bedford.
Right.
And it was his friends that told him, gee, you got to come out and watch your son play ball. And he showed up one day, pulled up behind the backstop in his car, and I saw him pull up. I was shocked. He got out of the car, lit his cigarette like he always did. He watched maybe 3 innings, got back in his car and went home.
Still pretty cool that he showed up.
I was a good softball player with one arm. I mean, that's kind of why my arm is all messed up, because as a 20-year-old amputee, I wanted to live my life, and I wanted to participate in sports. And I did football, racquetball, basketball, softball, and I played all over the country softball, all over the country. Wherever I went to at the VA, I always played softball.
Right.
And the book talks about it. I had a great time. I don't regret what happened to me. I have no animosity to anybody, either Vietnam. I have no intention on visiting the place. A lot of guys have, and they say it's beautiful. Well, I visited.
You saw
and
enough,
I
right?
saw enough. Yeah.
That's right.
But I hold no animosity towards anybody. I lived my life the way I wanted to live it, and I'm still living it that way.
Good. What were some of your what were your experiences? What did you think about the end of the war when it was over for you, and then your end of service as well?
Yeah, it was difficult because the amnesty program in, I'm trying to remember, 72, 71, 72, that was difficult because now I'm in the VA system up in Boston. And I was working with, my boss was a Korean amputee, lost his leg in he was a naval guy, lost his leg in a anchor chain accident. But the other guy that I work with, we got hired at the same time, was a Marine, Vietnam, lost his leg in Vietnam, very bitter, young Italian guy who's since died of cancer a long time ago. But we were friends, but he was very bitter. And when the amnesty program hit, a local newspaper, was the Phoenix newspaper, came to interview he and I. And he had made a comment in the article about how a lot of people judge us because of the fact that we get compensation from the government for our wounds, but yet we can still work. And it's because, well, he and I both had the same attitude when it came to, I don't want to sit home and get a check every month. I want to be productive in society and do a job that has some worth. So the two of us got hired at the same time doing the same job. And the article in the paper, I have the paper, I don't think I have it here. I think I left it home. I kept the article that published that day. He took a lot of heat for that article. He took a lot of heat by saying that because some of his friends thought that he was being specific to them. Like, you're jealous of me because I get a check from the VA every month, which wasn't back then a lot of money compared to today. I think when I got out, my first check was from the Marine Corps because I was retired. I'm a Chapter 61 medical retiree. $150 a month.
Oh man,
big time.
What'd you do with all that money?
Good thing I was living at home with my parents. And then the VA rated me 90%. That jerked that check up to $356 a month.
That's right. You're the richest guy in town.
Big bucks. Big bucks. But he took a lot of heat because of what he had said in the article, and he kind of was alluding to the fact that you're going to give amnesty to guys who rejected the war, but you're still going to be jealous of the fact, in a sense, that we're being paid because we put our life in the line and come home with serious bodily injuries and have to deal with these injuries. This is before Agent Orange.
Right.
This is at the very beginning of Agent Orange with the pesticides, because I was there when they defoliated the DMZ. It would have been the summer of '66, because I got hit in September, and I can remember the DMZ, we rotated up there in July, and flying over the airstrip at Dong Ha, I think it was, and seeing the ground that was jungle gone.
Right.
Gone, just killed all the vegetation, not knowing back then what it's going to do to us. And that, the amnesty, and then my attitude always was, if you want to go to Canada and leave the country to avoid the draft, I have no problem with that. Just don't come back and expect to get benefits from this country. And that's one of the things that frosted a lot of us with guys that would want to come back to file for welfare. It's like, get the hell out of here. You didn't want to sacrifice for society, for our society, like a lot of us did back in those days, whether we intended or not. If you got drafted and you went, I have friends who were draftees, Army, who were Silver Stars, Bronze Stars, Purple Hearts. They have all those ribbons.
Absolutely.
And they were Army draftees. They fought in Vietnam, bungee sticks, stepped in IEDs, got all messed up, came home and worked here. They survived. They're great guys. We have coffee up until my surgery, 3 days a week. We meet, and there's a group of Marines, Navy, Army guys, Air Force guys, all Vietnam, all did their part. Not necessarily in combat, but they were boots on the ground.
Sure.
And it's meaningful.
That's good. Do you think that, I mean, you seem to have been pretty successful since your time in the military and all the things that you choose to do. You didn't let your wound hold you back from doing anything. Obviously an all-star softball player all over the place. Do you think your time in the military, your time in the Marines kind of molded the man that you are today and what you've become?
Marine Corps made a man out of me. When I enlisted in the Marine Corps, the day I went home, after I got off the bus, the next day I went down to the customs house where the recruiter was. I enlisted, went home. Father was sitting in his chair, and I said, Dad, I enlisted in the Marine Corps. He said, you don't have the balls. So I went in the kitchen, saw my mother. She cried. I said, 90-day delay.
Right.
I want to stay here for the holidays. I got to Paris Island in February. Wasn't a good choice. It was freezing cold. There was ice on the parade deck. I had a short sleeve maroon shirt on, khaki pants, and penny loafers. I was freezing. It was freezing. It was so freaking cold. I couldn't believe I was doing this. What am I doing here? What am I doing? And those words from my father were just stuck in my craw. I didn't have the guts. Well, I got POC out of boot camp. I was the lead guy, squad leader. Didn't want it. I ended up working my way up to the front, not by choice.
That's right. It happens by accident.
I did well out of boot camp. Like I said, when I got to Millington, it was the same thing. They made the group leader out of me because there was only 20 of us, 20 recip guys and 20 jet guys, all in the same class. Then they split us off. But yeah, the Marine Corps made a man out of me. Made me tough. It made me organized. Much as my wife might say I'm not, because my office is a menagerie of Marine Corps.
You know where everything is, though. I get it.
It's under all the dust.
That's right.
Yeah, the Marine Corps is, it was only 2 years.
It's enough.
And I respect those of you that spent a lifetime in the Corps and continue to serve, because it's what we do.
Yeah.
It's what we do. And I have a lot of pride. I respect you. I respect every Marine that I've ever met. Very few I don't respect, and it's only if you don't give me respect, you don't get it back.
That's absolutely right.
But yeah, the Paris Island was not today's Paris Island.
No, I don't think so. My dad was a Paris Island guy back in the 60s as well, and
man, it was tough.
He would have told you it was a little different than when my time when I went through.
And see, now I went through. My father passed away, I think, in '93. We drove down to get some stuff in Florida, and on the way back, I said, let's stop at Paris Island.
You have to. It's almost a rule that if you're going by, right?
They were a Quantico. But because I was towing a trailer with my mother and all that, we'll go to drop the trailer, we'll go into PI. And they let me in. I got my old ID card. They let me in. When I went through Paris Island, you couldn't walk across the parade deck with somebody else unless you were in step. You walked in step. Everywhere you went, you were in step with the other guy.
That's right.
You walked by an officer, you didn't salute, man, you got your butt chewed.
Oh.
And then you had to salute numerous times, and it was not fun. When I stopped in 93, I'm watching guys just kind of walking around like it was nothing. It's like, what the hell is this? Then we had, in the 60s, you had outdoor classrooms.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I was smoking back then, unfortunately. They'd light the smoking lamp. So you'd stand around a bucket.
That's right.
And you'd, have to hold your ash, put your ash in the bucket, put your butt out in the bucket.
I've heard these
keep
things out near the wash racks.
Keep that clean, yep. I stop and I see these guys in an outdoor classroom laying around under the trees. I couldn't do that. They were just laying around smoking. And it's like, what the hell is this? That was Paris Island. I was very disappointed
Yeah.
in what I saw. And that was, 93. That was 30 years ago? 20 years ago? It's changed. It wasn't that way back in the 60s. Man, it was tough.
Right.
I saw guys try to run out. Saw guys trying to leave. I was fire watch one night. DI. LeBlanc, get over here. I get out to the back. We were in 3rd Battalion, Disneyland, because we had Marine brick barracks back then. Now they're all brick. But I was the only, 3rd Battalion was the only battalion was brick barracks. And they called us Disneyland. Calls me out, and there's a stairwell. We're on the 2nd deck, I think. And I'm looking down in the fire watch for the 1st deck, looking around, drops his ammo belt, and he bolts. And he's running across this open ground to the jungle, to the marsh.
The marsh, yeah.
DI, he said, watch this. He screams at this guy. Says words that I can't repeat here. The kid stops like, man, a truck hit him. Back here, and the kid turns around, comes back. He was in tears when the DI ran downstairs, got the DI, his DI. Yeah, I think there was only 2 levels back then. I can't remember how many levels we had. But he got his DI, and they could only guess what they did.
They just fixed the problem.
Yes. He didn't leave. It was, when it got hot, because it was Disneyland, we couldn't go outside. They'd fly the black flag, so you couldn't go outside.
Yeah, still do.
They closed the windows and turned the heat on. Mm-hmm. We'd troop and stomp in the building with the heat on maximum, dying.
They were just getting you prepared for the environment that you would be in once you went to war, I guess, right? They were looking out for your best interest.
It was psychological. PI, I thought, was psychological. There was physical aspects to it, but it's psychological too. They want to make sure that you're strong enough mentally. And then when you go to escape and evasion up in Dago, that was tough nuts too. They didn't mess around. And the guy in charge was a British Royal Marine colonel. And at the end of the day that we spent 3 days. The first day out in the woods, learning compass and trying to go from point A to point B without getting captured by the communists. And then outdoor classrooms telling you all about how to survive in the wilderness with catching rabbits and catching snakes and what to do with how to prepare them for food and all this. And they kill a bunny rabbit in front of you and all this stuff. And then you're sitting around on these low-rise benches waiting for something to happen. And sure enough, these guys come running out of the trees with their black helmets with their red stars on it, yelling and screaming, and, communists are capturing us. Then we do the Bataan Death March from there to the prison camp. I lost a soul on a brand new pair of boots that day. I get out there and they separate us. I was an NCO. So I got put in the NCO camp away from the privates and the officers. We had one lieutenant. Our lieutenant was the only guy that showed up because I think they all knew what was going to happen. He was the only guy that showed up. We never had a lot of respect for him until that day.
Right.
Skinny guy, pimply faced guy, young lieutenant. He was put in with the officers, and the NCOs that were like E4 and above were separated from the E3s and below.
That's right.
So I was with the E3s and below. But we all had a mission. after listening to the class, we all had to try to escape. That was our mission. So we tried a few things. They had me first load concertina wire in the back of a half-track. No gloves, just try not to get cut up with the concertina wire. After I did that, they put me in a 55-gallon drum that was buried in the ground, 2 of them stacked on each other, buried in the ground. They made me climb down into that. Well, you can't sit because
It's not a problem.
you're in a can.
Right.
They put a cardboard piece of plywood with a hole in the middle of it with daylight coming through it. That was the cover. And they'd stomp on it and they'd yell, and it was so hot. Las Pogas, I think we were, Las Pogas. There was a camp up in Pendleton.
It is Las Pogas.
I think it was Las Pogas.
It is.
And then they take me out of that. I wasn't going to break. All you got to do is sign the paper. Put your name on the paper. That's all you got to do, Marine. We'll stop messing with you. Just sign this. F you, F you. I ain't signing nothing. Thought I was a hard ass. And again, at 19 years old, 18, 19, you think nothing's going to hurt you.
Right.
Yeah, I'm a tough son of a bitch. And I just got through Paris Island, man. I'm a hard ass. So we tried a few things. One of our air wing guys, after we went through Millington, one of the things they did in Millington was a combat swim. You had to do a combat swim. And they do all kinds of different things. But one of our guys was Hispanic. 2 of our guys were Hispanic, but one of them couldn't swim. And when he went in the pool, man, he was a rock.
Straight to the bottom.
Oh, man, sunk like a rock. They would have to go in after him, pull him out. When we got to escape and evasion, he got pulled out. And he was the guy that they waterboarded him. Exercised him, got him all tired out, slammed him on the ground, put his head in a hole, put a washcloth on his face, took a small cup of water, dripped it on his chin.
That was all she wrote for him, huh?
That's it. He signed the paper. At the very end of it, they had us all sitting down. The colonel was up in this tower, wooden tower. They marched out 10 guys with brown paper bags on their heads. These guys all folded. The colonel made a comment that always stuck with me. If this was real life, I would have killed most of you guys for being disobedient by doing what we were trained to do. But those 10 guys signed the paper. We recognized him by his stature.
Mm-hmm.
We knew we never saw him again. I got a picture of him, but I don't know whatever happened to him.
Right.
So it was tough in the 60s, going through all that stuff and surviving. I'm proud of the fact that I was able to survive. I have a great family. I got, I don't want to forget this, I got 4 children and 8 grandchildren.
Congratulations, that's great.
We've got a nice piece of property. I'm doing okay financially, and my wife's a great person. If it wasn't for her, I don't know where I'd be. We've been married over 40 years, and she's my rock.
That's great.
She does things for me that a lot of women wouldn't do,
Right.
especially with all the surgeries I've had. I put her through hell. Even this last time, she's always on me. She's always worried about me doing too much and hurting myself, and I'm kind of a hard ass, so I do what I want to do.
I think you've earned it. I think you've earned that. I think you've earned that title. We're gonna let you keep that one. That's all right. I wouldn't feel too bad about it.
Thanks for this.
Absolutely.
This is nice. I appreciate it.
Well, I think this is great. Thank you for coming and sharing your story. The last thing I'll ask you about is any involvement you have, VFW, Legion, things like that, and what do those things do for you?
Yeah, I'm a member of almost everything. I'm disappointed because New Bedford, for example, no longer has a VFW. All the VFWs in the city of New Bedford are gone.
Neither does
Folded.
the city of Marion.
All gone.
Right. It's sad.
is sad. Our VFW in Freetown is viable. We're surviving by the skin of our teeth because we have guys that are doing a lot of things around the building that would normally you'd have to pay for.
Sure.
We've got a lot of volunteer guys. I belong to the Marine Corps League. I'm very proud of that. We meet now at the VFW in Freetown. I've been the adjutant for, it seems like forever, of the Marine Corps League, but we've had guys that wanted to move on and change positions or leave the position because they've just burn out. So I was recently elected the paymaster for the Marine Corps League, so I'll be the money guy. I talked to the current guy to stay for a couple more months because of my surgery. I've asked him to stay until the end of the year, so I'll be sworn in next month.
Oh, nice.
The state commandant will come down to swear us in, I heard. So I'll be dressed in my blues next month as the new paymaster. And I talked one of our female veterans to be the adjutant. I said, I'll help you out, whatever you need. I said, but I'll be the paymaster if you be the adjutant. And the reason she wanted to not be involved anymore was because the paymaster is not a computer guy, so everything's on paper.
Right.
So it's a 3-hour audit instead of a 20-minute, half-hour audit. It's a 3-hour audit. I said, everything will be in the computer. So
You're going to fix the system?
Hope so.
Good.
So that, the Legion meets at the VFW in Freetown. We don't meet very often, unfortunately, because we're a very, very small Legion. DAV, I belong to the DAV, I belong to the VVA. I don't attend those meetings anymore because I've been more focused on the Marine Corps League and the VFW locally, because we've had a lot of issues with our building. Our building is a 1911 building, so it's very old and a lot of problems.
Yeah, it's been fun.
So I focused on that. But in addition to that, veteran services. I get calls from all over the country from guys. I heard you're an expert on this or an expert. I said, no, I'm not an expert in anything. I will give you advice and I'll tell you what I think. It's up to you to follow up on it or not. If you don't follow up on it, don't call me back. If you follow up on it and they give you a ration or they don't understand, then I'll tell you what you should do. I remember I had a guy, this is years ago, called me from Florida, a retired master gun, Vietnam combat guy, called me, Purple Heart guy, combat wounded, another air winger, called me because he heard I was an expert on combat-related special compensation. I said, yeah, I know a little bit about it because I've been following it and applied it as soon as it came out. Had my application ready months before they approved it. He said, what do I do? So I told him what to do. I said, I don't know who to refer you to because I don't know anybody down in Florida. But you got to go to the regional office, find what organization you belong to. It turned out to be DAV. Tell the guy you want to file for CRSC. It won't affect your retirement. It's the additional money you're entitled to, blah, 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 all this. He ended up getting everything. He called me back once saying, this guy doesn't know. I said, I will email you the information. Right. You bring it to him and you show it to him. So he did, and the guy ended up knowing what was going on because it was new. He got everything. He got his full retirement. He got his compensation. He got his CRSC. He got everything. He was rolling in dough, happy as a hell. Pops was his nickname, Pops. I got a call from his wife months, year or so later. He had passed away. Cancer finally killed him. He had cancer then, and it was Agent Orange. When he passed away, she called me to thank me. I would tell guys, look, if you want to file a claim, don't do it for you. Do it for your wife. Because if you die and it's not on the record, she gets nothing.
Right.
If it's on the record, she might get something. She has a chance. It depends on what kills you or how long you've had your compensation. So don't not do it because you think somebody else deserves it more than you. Do it for you and your family. And most guys will follow up on that. She had called me to thank me that everything went good for her. Unfortunately, he passed, but he was one of the guys that used to organize our reunions. So we got a reunion coming up. My squadron meets in Orange Beach, Alabama in October. Right now I've told them I'm not planning on going because I'm waiting till the last minute to see if the doctor clears me to
go, right?
either fly or drive. I'll wait till the last minute to make my reservation to go there for 2 or 3 days. It's a good group of guys. It's going to be hard this time because it'll be the first time I go without my top.
Right.
It was always him, and he never flew anywhere. He drove everywhere. No matter where we had a reunion, he drove. Him and his wife, he had a Class B van, like a cargo van that he slept in. They would stop at hotels, but he had a bed in it if he had to sleep. But he never flew. He was amazing. He got up when he left the Corps. He was an over-the-road truck driver. Drove everywhere. I just
Sounds like he spent enough time in the air in Vietnam that he chose to drive around in the rest
didn't
of
want
his
to
time.
fly. Didn't want to fly. So I'll miss him because him and his wife became friends, and we would at the reunion we always went out together. You know, we sat together to eat at the functions or went out to have breakfast together. It was missing him this time is hard.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you for your time today.
No,
I absolutely want to
very
thank you
much.
for your service. Even though you say it was only 2 years,
Yeah.
obviously it was a lifetime, right? So
It was a lifetime ago.
thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to
Thank
come
you.
out and do this.
Semper
And,
Fi.
Semper Fi Dallas. Thank you, sir.